Today's RV short is going to be a little section on the spare tire in the GeoPros. And they're in different places in the GeoPro, but my FD model is right. Basically, here's the door on the side on the FD model. And if you look, you'll see this hole right here. We're going to go over a few things about where this is and what to check on it. So on this case, like I say, it's underneath your door, and you'll see this hole, and that hole lines up with a nut on the inside there. And what you will do is you'll use your actual handle that came with your GeoPro, and this is the one you use for your jacks. Of course, I've used an electric drill for my little jack screws now, but this is the one that comes with that. If you need to get that down, then basically you come in through here like this, and you run it through the hole, and then run it to that bolt right here on the inside like that, and then you crank down to get that tire down. Now, what I'm going to tell you now is one thing that you want to check on when you get your camper for the first time, and also probably at least once or twice a year, is you want to check to make sure this doesn't get loose. What I mean by that, we're getting underneath here, and so your tire should be nice up against the frame, and it shouldn't. This one actually needs to be tightened just a little bit, but if it bounces around, you need to tighten this up. You'll just crank on that crank to tighten it up. And looking underneath here, what's important about that is when you tighten this up, you need to make sure this piece is in the center. If this loosens up, this thing's going to flop around and it could come loose while you're going down the road. So like I said before, again, you want to make sure that's centered. And you'll see this one here, it's actually tight up against the frame, but it does have a tendency to slide back and forth a little bit like this. So I'm going to try to tighten it a little bit. The main thing is you don't want this bouncing around. You don't want it wobbling. It needs to be, there's a metal plate up here at the top. You want this to be firmly seated up against that metal plate. And this is your mechanism for lowering and raising. One thing you also want to check is you want to check, put a gauge on here, make sure it's got the right tire pressure, because you'll need that. And you sure don't want to worry about this thing being flat if you need it. So again, it'll be in different places on different ones. I believe most of them are going to be forward of your main wheels, and it should be forward of that, probably midway between your front wheels and your tongue, so that weight is distributed pretty evenly. But you want to make sure that you have that jack with you. Make sure you still carry that, even though you may not use it for your jacks. Also, what you want to make sure is that you've got probably a four-way like this. Make sure one of them does line up with your lugs that you currently have, and works for that. Now, because you don't have any of this with your camper, so you got to make sure you got something to get that loose if you have to change that out. And also, you need to have some kind of jack. And so what I'm using on my car, I've got a scissors jack. It's very similar to these stabilizers, but it's in my truck, and it actually will work on this. I can put a block up, and there's only certain places to jack this camper. And I'd mainly say, I think most people say you jack it on this main frame. We won't get into that too much today, but like I say, make sure you're jacking it in the proper place. Look at your owner's manual to see where those places are, but just be aware of all that, because when you're out there on the side of the road, you're not going to be thinking about it, and so you need to know. Another thing you want to do for maintenance wise is you can probably let this down, and there's actually a mechanism that you can lube inside of this steel frame up in here. You can also lubricate around this here. That just makes it easier. And just wanted to show you, I did tighten that up. Remember, it just swing back and forth before, and it's not swinging now. It's good and snug. So we're not going to have any more sliding around And that, like I say, you want to check this at least once a year, maybe twice a year, because it'll gradually maybe work down. So it's very important to do that if you're going to store this here. So that's about all I have on this RV short. Like I just want to show you. You can see that up underneath there. And you just want to be aware of where your spare tire is. Some people don't want to deal with that, and they'll take it off and they'll put it in the trunk or their back of their truck. But if you want to keep it under there, it's fine, as long as you make sure that's tight up against the frame and that you have the lug wrenches that you need and a jack that you need. So that's about all I have, and we'll talk to you again on another RV short.